I'll show that. Okay. Okay, so I'll clearly give this information on all the hooks. Okay. So first, like yesterday where I stopped, uh, I know that you don't understand the Redux architecture. Still, I explained you about this, but let me assume like you don't know nothing about Redux. Okay. So we'll try to spend a lot of time today on understanding Redux. See, every time you will listen this word reducer. Okay, this is very common. Okay, the main core of this Redux is reducer. Okay, so you have to understand everything, but focus should be more on this reducer. You will write reducer functions, and this reducers is the important concept in Redux. Every time you will, I will say reducer. Okay, reducer means it is a function that changes the state of the store. Okay, so I'll discuss more about Redux. But now you understood the concept, right? Yesterday, what I told, I'll just recap a bit, and then we will focus on the hooks again. So we'll iterate all the hooks again and again because you have to remember all the hooks. Okay. So we have like 7 built-in hooks in which every day I was explaining again and again because that will memorize you the hooks concepts. So when I tell context, I'm also telling you about use state, use effect. Okay. So we'll we'll discuss Redux again. Once you understand the Redux concept, right? Understanding use reducer is not a big deal. So instead of this use state, okay, we will use reducer. Why like that? Because if the state is very complex, okay, then you will use reducer. So I'll tell you now about the Redux architecture. Okay. So to keep it clear, okay, first I'll show you one diagram. Okay, like this. So first you assume, I will also walk you through the code, how you will set up this store. Okay. So first, okay, let me zoom out. So think like we have to create a store. Okay. Store. The first step is creating a store. The very first step, create a store. Why we'll create a store? Because we want to store the state inside this store. Okay, we want to um, like this store will hold the entire state of the application. Okay, so that's why state will live inside this store. Okay, state is an object which will be inside this store. Understood, everyone? So you will have this state inside the store. But first, to have to like inject the state into the store, you have to create the store first, right? You want a store, some central mechanism that will hold all our application state. That's why we use store. So first part is creating a store. Okay. So now you understood why we will create a store. Okay. Again, I'm telling you, we'll create a store to hold the state of the application. So now let's say we have a UI, our component or UI, whatever you call. So this is our UI or component or view, whatever you call. This is our React UI. So now we want to use that state in the UI, in this UI. Okay. So the main core thing is we want to um, from the get the state from the store. Somehow you have to get this state and you should map it to the UI. How you will do it? So you will do it by using something called select. You can also call this as like you subscribe or okay or subscribe. You subscribe to this store so that you will receive the state information, and that state information you will pass to the UI. Got it, everyone? Regarding this, okay. So this is one thing. So for this, actually, previously we followed a different approach, but we have something called Redux toolkit. I'll complete that architecture, but you also need to know there is something library which is called Redux toolkit. Okay, this is the library. So what does this library do? Like you install this library, and this will give the functions to create a store. Let's say we have this configure store, right? So this configure store is a function. Like here you have example, right? So this is the example how you will set up a store, how you will create a store. So you will have something called, like for example, you want to change the state from in the store. So here you know how to access the state by using this selector. Okay, selector is a component that is used for getting the state from the store. Everyone clear? Like we will use selector to get the state information, and you give it in the you map that information to the UI. So I'll tell you about this, but just before this, how you will change the state? Will you directly change the state from the UI? No, we should not change the state directly. State, you should not mutate the state directly. Don't mutate. What is this word mutate called? Change. Okay. Mutate means change. Don't change the state directly. This is a rule. Okay. You have to follow. You should not change the state directly. So how you will change the state? How you will change the state? You have something called a reducer. Okay. I don't write here. Don't write here like this. I will create one component that is called reducer. Okay. Mm, let's take this. This, yeah. So reducer. So how this reducer's responsibility is to change the state. Okay. You will not directly change the state, but you will use reducer function to change the state. Okay. So how this reducer knows that I want to change the state in this store. Okay. So I want to change the state inside the store. How this reducer will know? So you have to dispatch an action to this. Okay. I'm clearly telling you here all the things, like you have to dispatch. You have to uh, understand these two words, selector and dispatch. So you dispatch an action. Okay. Dispatch is also a function. So you trigger that function. Okay, I will tell you like what we will do internally, but just now understand at a very overview. Okay, so here you will dispatch an action, and again What is action? So you have to dispatch an action, right? So you will dispatch an action. Again, what is action? So action is nothing but a combination of type and payload. Okay, it's an object. Action is nothing but it's an object with type. Let's say we have a type called increment. Okay, increment. And you might have a payload. This is optional. You might have a payload or you don't have a payload. So based on this type, this reducer function will trigger, and that reducer function responsibility is to change the state. Okay. As of now, I'm just deleting it, but you understand what is action. Action is nothing but an object with information of type and payload. Okay. So this you have to understand. This completes the Redux architecture. This is very important for you to understand this cycle. How UI. So for example, in the UI, I clicked a button. Okay. When I click button, what I will do, I will dispatch. I will call this dispatch function. Dispatch, for that function, I'll provide this type and payload. So based on this type, how this reducer should react, we will write the logic inside the reducer function. Reducer is also a function. So we'll define what we have to do inside that reducer. So based on the type, this type increment or decrement, whatever you give the type, based on the type, this reducer function will trigger some logic. That logic is responsible to change the state in the store. Understood, everyone? Are we clear? I know you don't understand internally, but what you are doing here is very important. You are changing the state and you are accessing the state. How you are accessing the state? So you have a store and you have a state, and you access that state by using this selector, and selector will from selector, that state is you access, that state you provide to the component, UI component. And how you will change the state or update the state? You will dispatch an action. Respectively, that reducer function will trigger some logic. That logic will change the state. Everyone clear? Because I don't want to iterate again and again. Everyone clear what we are doing here? We're just reading the state and updating the state just two things. We are doing all this. Once this is, if you understand this logic, then it is easy for you to write the code. Everyone clear about this? Because next time I'm going to tell you the reducer, use reducer hook. Then we'll discuss other things. Everyone clear? Someone, I need acknowledgement.
Ram, in reducer, it will automatically updated the code.
You will write some code. Okay, for example, you have increment, then execute some logic. If you have type decrement, if the dispatch type is decrement, then you do some logic. For let's say you have some count variable in the store. Okay, let's say you have this count is equal to 0. Okay, so here I want that count to be incremented by 5 or something like this. Okay, so you dispatch an action increment. So here you will define all the action types. Like for increment, you have to do, like you have to update the state. For increment, I have to update this state. You increment, you do like count plus 1, something like that. Count plus 5, because I'm sending the payload 5. So count plus 5. Then this will change the state. This will change the 0 to 5, like this. So you will mention all the logic related to like increment, decrement. If you get decrement object, what you will do? you do like this, -5, count -5, count +5. So based on this type, this reducer will do this work for you. And you have to define the reducer also in it. The reducer functions you will write, and that functions will do all the work. Understood, DP?
Yes,
DP is
Ram.
only one who actively interacting. No one else. Like if you don't understand something, please ask now itself, because I am not going to be available for you after one month or something like that. Because if you have any questions now itself, you ask. If you understood this concept, just tell me yes or something. Overview. So just we are doing read operation and update operation, guys. Okay. So how you are reading? You have a store, and inside the store you have the state. How you are reading? By using a selector. I'll show that in code also. No worry. But now just understand how you are reading and how you are updating the state. So once what happens, the magic, where is the magic, when you update the state, right? This state is automatically synced to your component. Your component will update once you update the state. Understood, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Mm, okay. So no one is having doubts here. We are clear, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'll teach you like the use reducer hook now. Okay. I'll take the example now. Okay, so we are going through all the hooks, but now I'll tell you the use reducer hook. Okay, so I'll let me create one new component. Like I already have this counter, right? So here, how you are changing the, so by using use state, so you are just changing the count, right? You're changing the count. So I'll again tell you about use state and why we use reducer here. Use state versus use reducer. Okay, you have these two things. So for advanced use cases, we will use reducer. If the state logic is very simple, if the state logic is very simple, then you use state hook. And if state logic is very advanced, like let us take this example. So count the same counter. Okay, same counter. Again, I will code for you. Count, comma, set count is equal to use state, use state, use state, and you will give the initial value here. Everyone remember, right? This one, use state, count is just current state, and this is a setter function. So you call the use state hook by providing the initial value to it, and this value is stored in the count variable. And this count you will display it in the UI. If you want to change the count, you will write an anonymous function and use that setter function to increment the count by 1. We are clear, right? Use state, about use state, how use state is like you can increment. So here in the app.jsx file, um, I'll remove all this. I'll just add that counter component again here. Okay, so I'll run this server. Okay, you see, when I click right, this is getting incremented. How? You all can see, right? So when I click this, the state is getting updated, and you can also inspect and see. mm, Here, this is not. I'll open this in. So this is a guest account, so that's why it's not. You're not able to see. Okay. So here I'll open that server port and see the components. So you can see the state here. Okay. So this count variable. So whenever I click increment button, so this count will increment. Okay. The state hook. So here, what we are doing here, the logic in the counter application in the counter component. So when I click, I'm executing this set count and sending what is the initial state 0, right? So the count is 0. So your 0 plus 1, 1. So now the count variable hold that value 1, will store that value. So now next time when I click, the count value is 1, right? Already. So 1 plus 1, 2. So in that manner, it will increment. So if I want to decrement this, I'll take another button and just do counter -1 and just name this button as decrement. So now when I increment, that counter will increment and the state will get updated. When I decrement, the counter will get decremented and -1. Okay, by -1. So now the state is on. So this will be in sync. So everyone understood use state. So now for use state, here I provided the number, right? But I can also provide um, the object or string, whatever is there, you can provide. Like you can provide a name, a string, or you can provide a boolean value like true or false, and you can also provide an object like this, like username and password. We did all these examples in our previous classes, but I'm just reiterating you because some of new people also joined. So this is also a state. So you can store an object inside the state. But when you will use this use reducer, that is our main focus. Why we will use this use reducer? You already have the use state. Why will you use reducer? So if the state logic is very complex, okay. Let's say you have this user address. Okay, now this is count, right? But let's say we have user info and user set user info. So instead of count example, now I'm taking a user example. So you have this user information, and that user information you want to change, right? So let's say this user is having address, right? So inside the address, let's say he is having home address and uh, home address that is also another object, and he is having office address, right? Office address is having more address here. So let's say here you have uh, like state, city, pin code, right? So let's say state as Telangana and city, pin code, everything will be there for him, right? And this address also will have like state and city. So just I'm giving you clarity. Clarity. So is that where did I join? Hmm. Okay. So uh, just now try to understand, like, see how state is growing here, the state object. You have inner levels, right? let's say you have other information also about this, like additional informations like pin code, house number, something like like house number. Now you understand how the state is having internal objects. So now the state logic is very complex for you to update, right? Understood? So if the state is very long, then you will use this use reducer. Like state logic, if the state logic is complex, you will use reducer hook. And why we'll use state? If you have simple logic in the state, like let's say you have username and password, and this UI is like a login UI or something like that. This is a login user. Someone can you go on mute? I'm getting echo. Who is that? Uh, Everyone understood, right? So let's say we have a login input, but input username and input password, and he presses the submit button. He clicks the submit button. So you have what you have to store. You have to store two input values like username and password and submit. Assume this as a login page. So then your state will be just simple. So you use state. But if you have complex state, then you will go for use reducer. Okay. Mm, okay. So now we will do step by step, same this increment decrement logic. Just before we saw that increment and decrement by using use state, right? Now the same we will do with the reducer. Okay. So I will show you now. I'll write that use reducer logic. So how you imported this use state? In similar fashion, you import use reducer hook. Okay. So now you will call that use reducer hook like const. So that use reducer also will return you two things, the state and dispatch function. Okay. Use reducer. You call this use reducer hook. Same like how you call use state, like const. Just before we have this logic, right? Count, set count is equal to use state. So this is use state. So you have count, set count, and you call the use state hook and you pass the initial value. In the similar fashion, you will call use reducer hook that will return you when you call it. It will return you two things. One is the current state and a dispatch function. Okay, instead of setter function here in the state, you will get the dispatch function to update the state. So what you will pass to this use reducer? So here you are passing initial state, right? But here you will pass the reducer function and initial state. Clear, everyone, what you will pass as an argument here? So I'm telling you like use state versus use reducer. So instead of doing this, you will do this in reducer. Use reducer, you will call this hook, you will pass two arguments. One is reducer function and initial state. So do we have the reducer function and initial state? No, right? But let us create that initial state. Let initial state is equal to, it's an object, count 0, something like this. Same, how you are passing 0 here, in the similar fashion, you pass initial state. This initial state is an object with count of 0. So now you have the initial state. And how can I get this reducer function? So you write a reducer function. Okay, it's not only you cannot like you instead of writing in the component, write it outside. Okay, so here I'll define a function, define reducer function. So I am not telling, so I just told you about the Redux architecture, right? Like I told you about this architecture. This is Redux. Okay. We just recapped what we discussed yesterday um, in the Redux architecture. So I explained this. But now what I am teaching you this just a small piece that of use reducer hook. Um, so this will lead you to understand the Redux logic more easily. So if you understand use reducer, then you will understand that Redux easily. So that's why this is a stepping stone for you to understand Redux. So directly jumping into Redux, it's not easy task. First, you have to understand the very basics. So here we are calling this hook. We are passing two things. One is the reducer function and initial state. So we have the initial state here, but we don't have this reducer function. So that's why here we are defining that reducer function. So this reducer function, I'm writing again. What this reducer function accepts, state and action. Just butify, okay? Just here. So I will also write comments here. So what you will pass to use reducer hook? What you will pass? Reducer function and initial state. And what you will pass to the reducer function itself. So this use reducer is a hook. Don't confuse with the words that I'm telling reducer, reducer every time. So use reducer is a hook and this reducer is normal function, okay? Normal JavaScript function. So this reducer function, what it will accept? What this will accept? State and action. Here, state and action. Everyone clear? You have to just remember this, what you will pass to this and what you will pass to this. And what this first one, this use reducer hook, what it will return? What use reducer hook returns? What this will return? This will return state and dispatch methods. Current state and dispatch. You have to remember a lot of things here. But if you organize how to remember, then that it will be easy for you to understand the concept. Reducer, use reducer takes two inputs, reducer and initial state. So we created this initial state. Now we will create a reducer here in the top. Now this reducer function will take again two arguments. One is state and the action. So current state and the action. So how you will manage this? So you will write a switch function, okay? Switch case. Everyone, I think everyone knows switch. So based on, so let's say you are already getting this action, okay? You have action. So you uh, search for action type, okay? Based on is if action type is increment, then sorry, okay, then you will return what you will return count and you have the state, right? You have the state. So how the initial state is like this, no? So this same object you will return here like this. Just I'm copying that object and pasting it. So you will return count. Now you have this state here. So this state argument can be accessed here. State dot count plus one. Okay. So now you add another case for like you will add another case for decrement. Decrement. So now what you will do? Same thing. You will return the same object again, this object, and what you will do? State dot count -1. Current state. Okay, state means current state. Current state. How the state is? State object is like this. Count. Okay. So now you do like this, and by default you have something called. Sorry, you will have one more case also. Mm, Where is format document? Okay. So I'm writing another case for, let's say you don't have to write a case again. You just default. If nothing happens or if some other action is uh, dispatched, then you will return the exact state again, that state object, instead of incrementing or decrementing. So you have this reducer function. You have to write this reducer function, and now you have this access. So now state dot count, instead of count, you write state dot count. Yes. So you write state dot count, and instead of this, like instead of uh, calling, we don't have this set count right here. This is use state logic. So I'm removing the use state logic. Instead, you call this dispatch function. Dispatch function. And for this dispatch function, you will pass action here. Okay. So I already told you uh, what is action. What is action? Action is nothing but an object with type and payload, right? So here, action means that object type. What is the type that we mentioned in the reducer? Increment, right? So here, increment, and type and payload, right? So payload. So do we need to send the payload? No, not necessary. Okay, just type. Yes. Why we are not sending payload? Because we are already have this hard coded, right? We increment by 1. So if you want to increment by 5, you send that payload by 5 and you add that action dot payload here. But that I will tell you how you will increment by 5. But now you will just increment by 1. So we are replicating the same thing how we are doing in the state used by using use state. Now we are using use reducer to accomplish this same exact task. So here, instead of set count, you dispatch an action type decrement. And be careful while typing this, okay? Why? Because you have to give exact this name only. Whatever the case is there, right? Same string you have to pass here. So now what happens is that yeah. So now you see same that logic only. Mm, I close this. It's a little bit confusing. Here we have the same logic, same counter. Now you have the reducer here instead of state. Okay, use reducer. So this state is counter is 0. So now when you increment, right, you see how that is getting incremented. When you call increment, I'm not using state here. I'm using use reducer to handle the state management. And when I decrement, it is decrementing. Same scenario, but we are now using use reducer. Did I use anywhere use state? No, right? So I'm removing this all this state logic, use state related. Everyone understood this? I think I know it's hard for you to understand this, but what you're doing is very simple. I'll just explain you again, step by step. You import the use reducer hook. Everyone listening? I just wanted to know because everyone is silent.
Yes,
Listening?
Ram.
Yes, sir.
Hmm.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you getting sleep by all this?
No, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So see, I'll reveal one by one, okay, what we are doing, then you will understand. I'll reveal one by one. So first, you write this component, counter component, right? You will write this, you create a component, counter, and you export that component. And in the app.jsx file, we are using that component. Clear? This is clear. We know how to create a component. But now we want to use the reducer hook to manage our state of this counter. What does this counter do? So it will count the logic. Like you have this count variable, this count, and you have to manage that state of that count. You have to increment or decrement. So you can also reset. Okay. So I'll add that logic. But now understand that. So now you have to write this line. This writing this line is the important step. So you how you will write? Again, I will write it for you. First, you call the hook, use reducer. So now you import the hook from the React and you call that hook here. Once you call that hook, you have to return that hook will return two things. What is that? One is state, the current state, and the dispatch. These two things it will return. And what does this accept as argument? Reducer function and initial state. You have to write this line. So here you should maintain these two things. Initial state. Do you have initial state? Yes. So how you will create initial state? Like this. You create an object and you store your state. Okay. So this, and now you have to write the reducer function here. How you will write? Okay. So for increment means I want the count variable inside the state to be incremented by 1. Decrement means I want the state dot count to -1. If it is default, I have to return the state. Okay. So now I wrote this reducer logic. It is very basic. Okay. Reducer logic will accept two things, state and action. Okay. State and action. So you will write this switch case. Writing this switch case is again an important thing. So write this switch case. So when you write this switch, you mention each case and you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to tell how the change states, the state changes from previous state to new state. So what does this reducer function do actually? What is the purpose of this reducer function? Change current state, current or previous. You can also call it as previous state, current or previous state to new state. This is the main purpose of writing this reducer. So first, you have this initial state and you wrote the reducer logic. Now you understood everything, right? So now how you will use this state and dispatch? State is like you will every time you will store that current state. So here you will store whatever the state is, current state is there, that state dot count you are showing here. And how you are incrementing and decrementing. So whenever I click the button, right? So I will dispatch an action. Action is nothing but type and payload, but I'm not going to send the payload now because you won't understand, but just now only understand that I am sending. Okay. So whenever I click, I will dispatch this type increment. So I'm explicitly telling that dispatch this action with type increment. So now this reducer will automatically execute whatever the code inside this increment. So what it is, it will return a new state. Okay. So what it will return? New state. So we are getting the current state or previous state and changing that and again returning that state. So this increment will do that. So whenever I click the button, so whenever I click decrement, this case will execute. The state variable will become -1, -1, -1 every time. I'll write one more case also for you, and I'll add one more button. So it's up to you. You can write something like reset. Okay. So case reset. So for this case, what I will do, I will return the same state, but now count will be 0 directly. So here I'll add one more button, same button, on click, dispatch, and type will be reset. Okay. So now what does this button do? When I click on this reset, what type I am sending here as an action? Reset, right? So this will execute in the reducer. So now reset means count becomes 0. Let us see whether the count is becoming 0 or not. First I increment and I decrement, right? Increment and decrement are working. When I click reset, state is resetting. It's went all the way to 0 again. Why? Because I'm changing the state here. Understand how we are changing the state. We're changing the state by using dispatch action, right? So I told in the diagram here clearly. So you dispatch an action, that reducer function will do the logic, and based upon that, the state will change. Right? You understood this concept? So this is a small use case, like how you will handle the same thing you will do in Redux. That's it. You write reducer functions and you dispatch actions, but little bit code syntax difference will be there, but the concept is same. So here you are not using selectors. Why? Because you are already getting the state directly here. Everyone understood this logic. I just wanted to know, are you facing any issues here in understanding this logic, all this code? This is a simple example. I can also do hard examples also for you, complex. But just try to understand this code. I'll send you this code. Just try to type manually and practice this code. Try to increment and decrement. You will understand this code. If you understand this code, then Redux will be easy for you. How you will? So tomorrow we'll do a setup. We'll set up the Redux toolkit in our project. Like we'll start from the beginning. Like we'll create a store. We'll write reducer function. So there is something called slices. Okay. So how you'll here it is a quick start. So what I'll do is uh, like I'll install Redux toolkit and this React Redux binding. So I'll set up a store. I'll create a store. Okay. I'll just do instead of JavaScript, TypeScript. Okay. Instead of TypeScript, I use JavaScript. So what I'll do, I'll create a store, and for that store, I'll give this reducers, all reducers I have, and provide the store at the top level. Okay. So creating a store is the first step. What is the next step? This is Redux again. I'm coming to Redux because I explained you already about the use reducer hook. We completed all the hooks. We have only two more hooks to learn. That is performance optimization hooks, use callback and use memo. But now try to understand this use reducer hook. I'm switching here and there because all the concepts are same. Use reducer will lead you to understand the Redux. Okay. So the next step is provide the Redux store to React. So how you are providing uh like sorry yaar. Okay. How you are providing, just give me a minute guys. Hmm. Okay.
So how you are providing the Redux store? So here you will get that provider from the React Redux library that we are importing, and provide that store to here at the top level. Same like use context. You understand how we provide here the context? How we'll provide the context here? See, we create a context and we provide, right? Same fashion, we'll create a store and we'll provide the that store to the top level of our app. Okay. So mm, where is that logic? So once this is the next step, providing the store to React. Okay. So I'll type this step also as our next step for uh, reduce like for understanding Redux. So you provide the store. So what is the first step? Create the store, then provide the store at the top level, right? So now you have something called slice, okay? Like pizza slices. Uh, so so everything you will write here. See, you write reducer functions here, same like how you wrote in Redux in use reducer. Still right, you create a slice, you give the name of that slice. So I'll tell you all this slice related tomorrow. Just I'm going an overview. So you add slice reducers to the store and you dispatch actions. Okay. And see, I told you the selector is important, right? You will use these two hooks from React Redux. Use dispatch and use selector. These are hooks by Redux toolkit. Okay. Not these hooks are not built-in hooks of React. You have to additionally learn these hooks. These are custom hooks created by this Redux team. Use selector and use dispatch. Okay. By the way, Redux is a third-party library. This is not a React library. You can use Redux for other libraries also, other frameworks also, like Vue.js and Angular. You can use everywhere, not only React. So you use the Redux and React Redux to do all this. So you dispatch the actions here like this. Same thing you will do. You will dispatch. So if you understand this use reducer concept, at least 10 to 20% you will understand Redux. Okay. Everyone understood this hook use reducer? If no, please tell me. I'll see the chats. No, just tell me. Anyone did not understand the reducer logic or use reducer? Understood, Srivardhan. Okay. Ishmita, you understood. I wanted this to be understood by you. You
Yes, sir.
already know. Yeah, yeah. You already know the context API. Maybe
Yes,
yesterday,
sir.
did you class? Yesterday? I did not. Yesterday.
Yesterday I joined, sir.
Okay.
But today I
Okay.
was late. I joined late
Okay.
today.
Okay. No problem. But see, again, like if anyone don't understand this, please again ask me. I'll tell you again. Okay.
Sir, can you
Uh,
repeat the
mm,
structure like theory part? Like, I understood the
uh,
code, but the
uh,
diagram.
mm, okay. Okay. Sure. Sure. Definitely. So this is Redux architecture. Okay. So this is Redux architecture. Yesterday also I told like Redux related architecture. Same thing. So again, I draw this diagram, how you will do the Redux state updates and how you will read the state. Okay. So first you will create the store, and for that store, you will pass the state, initial state or something. So your entire state, this is global state management. Okay. The entire state will be inside this store. So you will create the store. So how you will create the store? Like you will use Redux Toolkit library and you will configure the store. You will create the store. Once you have the store, you will have the state inside that. State is a giant object. Okay. Like you will store object like this, and you put all the state information in this object only. All the reducer logic, like everything, the state will be here inside the store. And how you will read that state? By using something called selector. Okay, selector. So you have that hook called use selector hook. That hook will allow you to select a specific piece of this state. So state will be very huge, right? So you will use you will um, read that state, a piece of state. If you want to, you can pick a piece of state. Like let me show you how you'll pick that state. Okay. So here in the use selector, so where I'm using, see, so this use selector hook I will call, and I will select a specific counter value from that state. So whatever you want, you can return from the state. So that value you will store here and you will update in the UI here. You use that in the UI. Just map that. You select and you get the information. That information you map in the component. It's as simple as that. So you how you will read. So we are performing read and update operations of state. So first operation is read. How you will read that state? You have a store and you have a state. How you will read that state? By using selector. Use selector. So that hook, you will get the state information and that you map to the UI. And now how you'll update the second operation? How you'll update the state here? How you'll change the state? State means a changing thing, right? A button will have on and off states. Now this counter is having different states like increment, decrement states, right? So same fashion, like how you'll update the state? So you have the UI, and whenever a button click or on change or some event triggered in this UI, you will dispatch an action. What is action? Action is nothing but information related like type and payload. And you will write reducer functions. And inside that reducer function, you will have logic like this, like increment, decrement logics. So now just increment, decrement is a logic for counter example, but you might have different examples. For that, you will write different cases, right? You will write a switch case or something. So you will do like that. So for increment, like when I dispatch an action, increment action, then this increment code will execute in the reducer. So I dispatch decrement action, then reducer function will do the decrement logic, trigger that, execute the decrement logic. So what does this do? This reducer do? Reducer will change the state, this state. So this reducer will have the access to the current state. Whatever the current state that is there in this reducer will have the access of this state. So most probably reducer will be inside the state. So that's why it will have access to the state. So what it will do, it will change the state and it will return a new state, and that new state is updated here. Why we are returning a new state here? Anyone know why we are returning new state? Because here we have this rule, right? Don't mutate the state directly. Don't change the state directly. So instead, this reducer function will return a new state object, and that state object is updated in the store automatically by Redux toolkit inside, like Redux logic. You need not to directly see. Like, am I doing like this? State. Am I doing like this? Like I already have the state, right? State dot. I can also do like this, right? State dot count is equal to state dot count -1. Like this also I can write. But why I'm not writing like this? Because here I'm assigning a new value. This is nothing but mutating the state, changing the state directly. Mutation. Okay, this is called mutation. Mutation means change. You should not directly change the state by using assignment operator like this. Instead of mutating the state, you you return a new state like this. Same that state variable, but with different information. Like you can access the state here and you will return a new state. That's why we are returning here. You understand why we return here? You know, we should not directly mutate the state to return. Okay, so that's why I wrote this. Don't mutate the state directly. Instead, you dispatch an action. Based on the dispatch action, the reducer function case will trigger. That will execute and it will return a new state, and that new state is updated in the store automatically. And for performance basics and performance and memory things, we will not mutate the state directly. That's why they have this rule to not to mutate the state directly. Okay. So once the state is changed, right? So you are selecting a piece of information from the state. That's why this is called say use selector or selector. So you select that state, that state you map it, right? So once you update the state in the store, that information is automatically passed to the UI. So that's the magic. So when you change the state in the store, that will update the UI. So for example, here initial state is what? 0, right? But if I give initial state 5, now you see, where is that? How the initial state is coming 5? Because it is the UI is already fetching that current state. So it's easy for you to understand. Like if you change the state inside the store, so now we don't have store, we don't have anything in this. So this is just to you. I wanted you to understand how we dispatch actions and how we handle the state management, how we update, and how we read. So we read by using this state now. But here, this logic is somewhat different. The same thing, like same, but different. So you create a store, you have the state, that state you will select and you will update you map to that UI. And how you will change the state? Dispatch an action. The respective reducer function will run some logic to return a new state. That new state is automatically updated in the store. Once if it is automatically updated in the store, since you have already selecting the state, so that updated state is again passed to the UI automatically. Okay. Understood, Sushmita, you understood?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is overview. So I'll share this image. You will easily understand how we will do it. Like you can easily understand by looking at this diagram. You're just doing two operations here. It's nothing hard to remember all this. How we will do in the code tomorrow I will explain. Like for large scale projects, everyone will use reducer Redux toolkit. Okay, so everyone will use Redux. So if you don't understand Redux in that project, you cannot work. But every complex project, if you join MNC or any other companies, or even the project that we are doing in the Ncatch, we will use the Redux to handle complex state logic. Why we are using Redux? Because handling the state internally is very hard. So you put the state outside. Then what benefit you are going to get if you put the state outside of the application logic? See, now I'm storing the state outside of the app. Where is my app? Here. But I'm storing the state outside. So why we are doing this? Why we are storing the state outside? Because I want to share the state across multiple components. Okay. So here I already told you how can I share the state to multiple components. So now you can, for example, you have another counter component, another counter you have. Then what will you do? So, so you have another counter component. So the same thing again, like you can access that state inside the uh, like here this reducer is related to this only concept, but in Redux what happens, you will put the state inside the like store, right? So when you put in the state inside the store, that store relies on outside, like it will be outside of the app. So once it is outside of the app, then you can access that by using that use selector. So use selector, you call you this use selector hook, and that will read the state. You can use that state in any component. There is no parent-child relationship, and there is no prop relay by using this. So that's why we'll use Redux, and Redux will give lot of support like Redux Dev Tools, Redux Logger, middleware support, everything you will have. So I already told you, like these are the hooks that we have: use state, use effect, use context, use reducer. So mostly to achieve the Redux, what you'll do. So now currently what we don't have, the store, right? So the same thing, like if you combine context and reducer, then that is Redux. That's it. You have something to store, and by using reducer, you will update that store. And tomorrow we'll discuss use memo and use callback. Okay. And yeah, that's all. That's all. We need not to discuss more. I already gave you enough information. So we'll discuss use memo and use callback tomorrow class, and we'll complete the hooks. So I also discussed use ref, I guess. So I don't know, if you guys followed or not. But we also have one more hook called use ref. You understand all of this, then that is very easy for you to work now with function components in the application. So you have to understand. So this use ref is also done, right? So now you have pending is use memo and use callback. And one day we will go again from the beginning. We'll do all the uh, six like hooks to change the state. Sorry, not only change the state, to use the React features. So you need to understand all this. And there might be a custom hook to share the logic. Okay, any doubts here? I'll wrap up this call in a minute or so. Like, are you clear? How about the class today? Is it good? Did you
Yes,
learn
sir, it is
something?
clear.
Yes, Ram.
Yeah. At least you now you understood at least the architecture of the Redux, how it will work, right? I will also go through the code, no worries. But now just try to understand, and I don't know whether you are watching some YouTube tutorials or something. Just search for Redux introduction and all those things. Okay. And also, I gave this exercise. Did anyone complete today or still pending? Already saw DPs and some other Naresh. But Naresh, yesterday you used some generate tool to create that example. But I don't want that. You have to think and do it. Okay. And anyone else did this user interface? Okay. See, even this Redux concept, I will get a sleep. Okay. Because I learned this many times, and I explained this concept to many people. Even I will get the sleep. I know what is your position. But please, just now you come out of that comfort zone and just try to understand what you are doing. So tomorrow we'll do Redux logic. We'll write all this code, and we'll also do one more example using Redux logic. And if you understand Redux logic, right, then you will easily perform CRUD operations. We will integrate APIs and we'll do CRUD operations like create, read, update, delete. All those operations we'll do. Then it will be easy for you to work on a project. Okay, that is the benefit you are going to get. Yeah, any questions here? No, if no, I will wrap up this call. We are done. No one did the exercise. I'll give you one more day. Tomorrow evening, I wanted that at least for some of you. I wanted that uh, exercise to be done by you. I know, like maybe you might use ChatGPT, but just use whatever you learned and that you implement. See, I gave this exercise for you to manually understand on that, not to just copy and paste from ChatGPT and complete the task. Not like that. You have to think logically and accomplish that task. Okay. Yeah, lot of people are dropping. That's okay. But yeah, thank you. Uh, no questions, right? I'll take this as a no. Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Okay, Ram.
Yeah. Yeah.